You have a strategy in that effort. Now you start where the organization is probably hemorrhaging most, and many times the organization knows that. They know where they're weakest. And so you focus on those areas and you try to clean it up. But you have to be careful not to, if you disrupt that company and you start implementing vendors that are providing a lesser service, just to try to give them better cash flow or something like that, you could be hurting your own client. Well, it's very important to me when I leave, not only are they have a better profitability or cash flow, and which they can choose to reinvest in the business or anything else like that, but they actually are also operating better, more their performance is higher, they're more efficient, and they're growing more rapidly, because that's my true test of success. Because if I only sell that, hey, I'm going to make you more profitable, then I'm not sure. I don't think I'm necessarily helping the company, because that's not a long-term aspect.
Welcome to Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help manufacturing executives command the front and win the floor. I'm Richard Walsh, creator of the Sharpened Impact methodology, and I spent decades helping leaders transform frontline teams, unlock hidden profit, and capture capacity they didn't even know they had. If you want to see where your leadership gaps are costing you and how to fix them, head over to grittolead.com and run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator today. Let's sharpen your edge and get started. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Duane Deason with us today. And Duane, no one knows Duane as good as Duane. So Duane, we need the backstory. Bring us up to speed and we'll tear into the conversation.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate you having me on. I hear it all started back in LA, when I was born there. And soon thereafter, my parents joined the Foreign Service. And so I grew up overseas. Most of my time up till in my mid-teens was in different countries, and actually had a difficult time coming back to the United States and adjusting to our culture more than I had at other cultures overseas. And was struggling academically, which I understand was you had that issue at some point as well. And then uh, I had, I guess, fortunate or unfortunate incident where I broke my leg and I had a cast up from my toes to my butt, and I was stuck in boarding school in Maine, which was in winter, which is freezing. And so I didn't really have much to do, and I cracked a textbook, and that really ended up changing my trajectory. I started focusing much more on academics, and started to enjoy learning and started to explore that, and so that became more of my identity, and progressed on that. And then in college, got my background in accounting because I was standing in line with a fraternity brother of mine. And of course, when you're standing in line with a fraternity brother, you're having a couple of drinks. And by the time we had gotten to the class enrollment person, I had copied his schedule, and I was in a now accounting major. Um, and so that's how I kind of got that started down that trek. And it was a good background because it really taught me how to get into the nuts and bolts of a company. I think if you learn how a company does business through its accounting, you can really learn a lot about the core of a company. I started my own business when I was 27. We were doing transaction support for companies that were going through IPOs or funding or some sort of big growth initiative that was back in the dot-com boom. And I sold that business when I was 33. It was doing pretty well. Went on board with one of my former clients as their CFO. And that really changed my career at that point, because that company had about a year's worth of cash left, but they were burning through it really quickly, and they were doing the Titanic. And because of that, my focus had to be to help end the burn rate and start getting that company into better shape. And I really enjoyed that role. Felt like I was good at it. I got the company to cash flow break even. We were starting to grow again, and we sure enough were able to attract a buyer at a very difficult time. And I felt like it really had helped to save a company and save a lot of jobs, and that felt really good. And from that point on, I decided I would dedicate my career to helping companies. I refer to as manage costs, but it's really operating more efficiently and accomplish more. And about 2 years ago, I kind of came to a realization that after I left a company, they were really they within several months and some at least within a year or two, they had kind of reverted back to where they were before I had gotten there. And it was kind of discouraging that I realized that what I had tried to teach them wasn't sticking. And so my more recent focus has been trying to help companies teach them how to fish rather than give them a fish. I've written a book on the topic in order to try to explain how companies should be run and how they should focus. I have a podcast. I enjoy joining podcasts such as this one, and I do speaking engagements, all trying to be a better advocate for if companies can operate more efficiently. I think they help themselves a lot more, help their employees, their customers, their shareholders, and so that's really what I dedicate myself now to.
Well, I love it. I think all that being said, one thing I'll jump back. I too had a cast from my foot to my
Ah,
butt. My
there you go.
last like week and a half of boot camp in the Marine Corps, I had a wicked stress fracture on my lower leg and had to do that. But whatever you need me to do, I'm banging out push-ups. I just hooked that cast over the back leg, and I'm doing whatever I had to do, so I wouldn't get dropped, and look like I
I
got
think
out.
it's a
But
good experience. I think
it
everyone
is.
should. It shows makes you feel a little vulnerable, hopping around on crutches when you're used to being a great athlete.
Except I got out. Okay, like
Oh,
2 weeks later, right? I got out of basic, and my like best friends happen to live in San Diego. So my buddy and his mom picked me up, came to my graduation. I got to their house, Duane. I go, you got like a big knife? I got a butcher knife
oh,
and a hose. I sat on their back porch. I'm like, I am not being a Marine with a cast on my leg, and I chopped that thing off.
wow, wow.
And luckily I didn't have any repercussions, but I didn't say anything to anyone. I had leave for a couple of weeks and all that. And I did that and just showed up. I'm like, I can do it. I can still run. I'm like, I'll be okay. But yeah, I was kind of,
Glad that
I was
worked out
that
for
nut
you.
job. I don't recommend it, but it worked okay. No problem since. But back to the topic at hand. This efficiency aspect from a financial standpoint to me, like you, I think is a critical aspect that most businesses don't understand. And you said it right, like it's really important. You said you work 2 years and then, or whatever it is, and they go back to what they were doing. So I know when you get into business, especially I deal a lot with, construction trades, stuff like that, but pretty much any business, most people don't know how to operate a business. Okay.
It's frightening. Huh?
In the day to day and the financial. Okay. So it's like this, it's crazy that they succeed. I'm the
Yeah.
same way, right? I was no genius. I just thought making money was doing business, right? But I didn't know all the everything else that actually made the company run. You figure it out the hard way, you keep going and you get it done. But I love that you recognized that they're sliding back into the old way in their old ways. And I want to kind of start right there. So I think a good place to start. Like, what was you saw this happening, but then was this like you got introspective, like, well, what did I do wrong? Like didn't work, or is there I didn't give them a system, or what did that look like for you to start to even figure out what went wrong
Mhm.
and then how to create the new way forward?
So I really looked at it two different ways. So first of all, I when I come in, and sometimes I'm part of a team, and we come in, and usually the company, by the time they've reached out, you like to think that they're progressive and they're doing well, and they just want to call somebody in to do better. Usually there's some sort of financial challenge going on at this point, whether they are in decline, whether it's sales, whether it's they have a lender that's breathing down their back, something that is a catalyst for calling me and a team in. And the first thing we do is we go in there and we form what called a cost management center. And it essentially we grabbed basically the checkbook. We looked at all the compensation, how the organization was structured. We looked at everything from head to toe. And I think one of the reasons that companies reverted back is they don't have that structure internally. They have a very dispersed cost management structure where they have perhaps sourcing is either under operations, or maybe finance. Real estate is in a different place under different leadership. Travels under different leadership. Compensations usually under HR, and for a lot of these people, it's kind of sideshows. For HR, compensation is on their plate, but they've got a lot of other things they're worried about. And same with finance. They're trying to do deals, M&A activity, investor relations. So you'd like to think that sourcing, if it's under them, or just even managing costs is top of their priority. They've got a lot of priorities. And so when we were in there as a cost management team, I think that essentially they need to form, companies need to form that as well and do that internally. Don't just wait for us to do it. And when we left, the cost management team crumbled because we were it. If they form their own and it lasts like that, then I think it can, I think it has a lot more kind of potential to stick. And the second reason I think is that I think companies don't, part of the problem is, and I think this goes back to your earlier comment, is companies are led by a visionary usually. They are usually start by an innovator or a visionary, and those people are not necessarily and often are not good at running a business. And to compound the problem, they're also attracted to other visionaries. They love being around that. And so they, instead of hiring the doers to that help counterbalance them, they hire other visionaries. And before you know it, you really just you have a company that's kind of lost in its vision and not able to execute on that type of thing. And so they don't kind of fix themselves and get back on track, and they perpetuate that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We often, as owners, I mean, who doesn't like a like-minded person to
That's
be
right.
with them, right? So,
Right.
but it takes a certain discipline to not find someone who's an antagonist, but really who's thinking differently, or has an expertise, right?
Hmm.
I often talk about partnerships too. You want someone who's going to be an actual partner must have a very unique skill set they're bringing to the table.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they just need to be an employee. Okay, so
that's
you
right.
can get rid of them because partners don't just go away. Okay, so
Right.
I love the fact you're looking at this, and when you understand that complexity, when you've got an owner, again, it all depends on the size of the company too. Sometimes as you grow, you're forced to do other things, right? But like you said, when they're calling because things are on fire, you know,
Right.
we'd all like to call the fire department when the fire's small, but it seems to wait till the half the place is burned down, right? Then we go try
Yeah.
to, and nothing gets saved. So it's important. But I like the fact that you can recognize that. So here's a question on that. How well, so here's your owner, your kind of president, whatever you want, and you've noticed they've surrounded themselves with other like-minded individuals,
Mhm.
who aren't really adding to the, they're not, let's say they're not acting as assets. We'll put it in that term, okay? And like, how is that received when you kind of lower that little observation? Is that received well?
It's
Do they get the pushback? What does that look like?
so I think it's I am all about blunt and the honesty and being forthright. And so I think for the most part, higher level leadership appreciates that. They appreciate people that tell them like it is. And that's not to say that they necessarily correct the issue. They listen, and what corrections might be marginal. So you like to think that you're going to come walk away from every organization with radical change, and that is not necessarily the case. I think in many cases you have to set your expectations that you're trying to help the company in as much as it will let itself be helped. And so I have a piece with that, and I'm not too worried about that. And I say other very odd things to leadership that I get that deer in the headlights look. Like one of the types of things I look at as a very efficient way to make yourself a lower cost is to be an attractive company. And when I say that, the leaders are all like, "What do you mean by make us attractive company?" And I really say that if you are a company that is exciting to work for, if you are a company, whether it's growing rapidly, whether people, you're known to have a good environment, people can move up, people are paid decently, they're treated with respect, and they have a work-life balance, and that makes you an attractive company. And when you're an attractive company, do you think that the best or brightest are going to leave there? No, they're going to stay. Your people are going to like to be there. Do you think you have to overpay them in order to stay? No, they're going to like working there and feel part of the company. It's only when you are not an attractive company that you have to overpay and you lose your best and your brightest. So there's a lot of different tips I give leadership sometimes that they do look a little bit awkward at me at first, but once I explain it, I think they get it.
Yeah, Dwayne, that's a huge takeaway. And I want people to kind of marinate on what you just said on that about the attractiveness of your business, because
Yeah.
you can build an attractive business monetarily and someone wants to buy you,
Yes.
but the attractiveness you just spoke of is what a lot of businesses don't know if they have it or don't have it.
That's
That's a
right.
problem too. They're kind of unaware. They think what I think is good is never what the people think is good.
That's
Right?
right.
I'm in a different world. I see things differently, and I always kind of joke. People ask me, I go, "Well, I just hired people like me because I knew they work the way I work and everything else, and I don't have to really do anything, and everything will turn out okay." I didn't want to add complexity by having different thinkers, and when it's actually an advantage, but really having that, like you said, you for the bad people, you're going to overpay, and this is one of those. It's contrary to normal thought, right? And I'm with you because I think when people have a place they can come to work, and I just call it and win, know what success is every
Mhm.
day, every
Yeah,
week, every month. Like, guess where they're going to want to go every day? To work.
exactly. Exactly.
Because man, you out there, home, out there, you're not winning all the time. Okay,
Yep.
it's tough, but
That's
man, you
right.
create an environment where they can win, and other people are winning, and you're around winners like every day. Like that's a good place to be, and you're not going to be in a hurry to leave. And I always say too, I'm like this. They need purpose, they need quality feedback, recognition, right, and then quality pay. Like people want
Yes.
to be paid well, but it's not first on the list.
Right.
And I think, do you run into that pushback? Because I tell some owners like, no, man, they gotta be paid. I go, no, they need to be paid, but your priority can't be that because they would literally sell you out for 50 cents an hour and move down the road. If money was the number one driver, that's not, and it's really not, it's pretty much how nobody operates.
If you have to keep employees by compensating them or trying to overcompensate them to protect them, it's just a matter of time before you lose those people. They're going to find another place that is going to willing to pay them marginally more, if you will. I don't think that's the type of employee that you can try to build an organization around. You have to build an organization around people that enjoy coming to there, that have a vested interest in there, and you do want them to have skin in the game. But if your company is growing and their career is expanding, and so they're moving up and being more and more challenged, they're going to see the potential long-term benefit and not necessarily have to jump to because they're going to get a few thousand more over at the company next door. So I very much agree with you that people that are you have to overpay aren't going to really last anyway. And if they uh, so I think you have to do something there to try to make sure that you pay them reasonably and have a good enough environment that they have a reason to stay.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. You have to incentivize. It has to be earned and incentivized,
Mhm.
right? So they have to have an incentive, right, to move forward, move up in the company, or achieve goals, whatever that might look like in their particular lane. At the same time, they really have to understand, like, I got to earn it.
Yeah.
People, and I get a little pushback on this, but I go like, I tell people, people actually want to work. They actually want to work. Okay. People like, no, no, where I go, no, they
That's right.
do. It's just the environment to work in and their ability to upward mobility, or not even upward mobility, but like, are they growing in that position? Is it a place they feel good at? And if people can't, again, if they're only focused on the money, well, first of all, you did a bad hire. You should be
Right.
able to see that in the hiring process, right? And you don't choose that candidate, right? But I really think if companies can create these environments, I help them do the same thing. And when you see it and you see that change, because turnover is huge, right? That's a very
Yep.
costly thing.
It is.
And you can
It
attach
is.
you probably attach an exact dollar amount to it, right?
Yep.
Because as you look at this stuff, and to take that from 12% down to 4%, that's no small challenge. That's some money. I
That's
mean,
right. That's right.
yeah, that's awesome.
And it's also if you by doing that you keep the knowledge with the company. So the cost is more just the recruiting aspect of it, and you lose some important knowledge that can leave the company. So you have good people leaving the company. It is very costly, and I think it can be tough on morale. So there's a lot of intrinsic aspects of losing somebody beyond the obvious dollar cost. That so if you really have to set up your organization to keep your best people, or you're going to struggle.
Yeah, excellent point there for sure. So back in diving into kind of the finance aspect. So now a thing of popular, and you may do a portion of this, you get your fractional CFOs, okay, which I
Mhm.
think is a real advantage for a lot of companies at certain levels,
Sure.
right? To bring these people in because, like you said, how are you creating the strategy? Because you have to create a strategy inside this whole realm of I'll just put the money, right? It's incoming and outgoing. Like, what is all that about? And that's kind of your sweet spot, right? Isn't that basically what you're doing for them?
It is, and so I do go into companies and help. I try not to be there. At least what I used to do is I'd get consumed by a client, and sometimes I'd be there for a year or two
Mhm.
because they were large enough, and I'd go from area to area trying to clean things up. So I haven't, a situation where I'm a fractional type of operator. Not so much. I'm trying now to be more of an advisor. So I'm going to help you execute on this, and rather because I think that way, once you have the structure that you've created, that's part of not based on consultants that are there, much more likely to have long-term results. So I kind of move along on that way, and I'm also a little cautious of now. You and realize you were just talking about the fractional CFOs and just put the name out there, but I'm a little cautious sometimes on CFOs because I was a CFO, so I can be blunt and honest about this. Is that I came up through the accounting ranks, and about 50% of CFOs do. And you would think that because I'm an accounting, maybe I'm good at managing costs. No, I was good at record keeping. I'm good at
Yeah.
financial reporting, but no one ever taught, I never took a class on really managing costs. Never had a lot of experience in that. I ended up having to learn that on my own in my own CFO role because the company was going to sink without it. And the same is true with many other CFO types where some come from investment banking. They're great deal guys and they know how to raise capital and investor relations, but does not necessarily mean they were ever part of a managing cost before and trying to make an organization more efficient. I would even say even FP&A, they get together their budgets, and a budget does not necessarily mean you're operating efficiently. And I'm curious to see if your experiences in that as well is that budgets, people are surprised that it's mostly based on inertia. Whatever you had last year is almost like a starting point for the next year. And then someone will arbitrarily tell you you can have 5% or you have to cut 5%. And it's really not based on any sort of science. It's kind of much more kind of put your finger in the air and see what comes out of that.
I don't think with the issue that I do, and I'm with you on this with the budget, they're not really forecasting properly when they create a budget. They're not looking at the needs. What are we running into? What does the market look like? Are we going to expand? Are we going to do this? Do we do a replacement cost? Things that they're not really factoring the big picture in. That's why I love what you're saying here because, and you're right, CFOs accounting, well, they're compliance guys. Everything's in the right box. Everything's checked. You're not going to go to jail, all that good stuff, but they're not going to give you strategy. They're not going to give you like tax strategy. Okay. That's not their thing. That's a different individual,
They can
right?
learn, but they haven't.
That's
Or
right.
they have to acknowledge to themselves that they need to grow in that area. And if they, think somehow they're inherently good at investor relations or cost management or any other aspect of their job, no, they have to learn that like every other skill, like we all do.
Yeah. I think now, do you find when you're I don't know if you're doing it now, but before when you're doing the cost management, were you really looking at, was that part of your thing? Like, look at these forecasts, look at these projections. What does a company produce or provide? Where's it going? I just think there's a lot um, variables when it comes down to like planning a budget. And I think what I've noticed, a lot of people just, they're not there or they haven't built in, this is not really a sidebar, but they haven't really understood their costs. Like I use replacement costs, right? Like a lot of guys
Mhm.
have a lot of vehicles. That's a lot of tires. You have 172 tires in your fleet. Okay.
Mhm.
Now they're all going to wear out. Like, do you in your pricing, in your cost structure, do you have a replacement line item
Right.
that a percentage that is going towards this? Because otherwise, one year you're going to get whacked with $37,000 in tires because you didn't plan it right. Now you're
Right.
pulling all that from your profit. right? So it's so I see that a lot, right? So that's kind of the stuff that if you get into weeds, that takes a lot to kind of fine tune and look at, right?
So when I first walk into a company, I look at where they're spending money and they have been spending money. And then I from that I get a good understanding of where they've been and where they are. And then I try to layer on what are the potential risks that are approaching and changes that are approaching that will change that pattern. I always hesitate to grab the budget and lean on that very much because at first I really don't know how valid it is and how reliable it is. So I eventually I do think I don't want to throw up on budgets. I do think they're a great idea, and I do think they can be valuable if they're done correctly, and it's still a good exercise to make someone think about how are you going to spend money. But I just caution people to look at it and say, well, they hit budget, so they're operating efficiently. I don't have not seen any correlations like that.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember growing up, my dad ran golf courses, right? So they give him a budget.
Right.
And then the only thing I remember as a kid was always say, well, I got to spend it all because if I don't, they'll give me less. I go,
Exactly.
I do at the time when I'm like 8, I'm not thinking, well, where's the science behind that? Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I understand, like, but that seems like a weird thought process. Like, I got to
Yeah.
spend it. In my mind, even young, I'm like, well, don't you want to save money? My dad was a master at doing
Mm.
things efficiently and like cut costs. He'll work with anything you got and he'll pull it off and it'll be amazing. He was just really gifted at that. But then that extra, like, no, you need to spend it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it
That's
won't give
that's
it
how
to
our
you. So
government works. You wonder why we're $38 trillion in debt because they feel like if they don't spend it one year, they'll lose it the next. And so they operate very inefficiently.
yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I do with my businesses too. Early on, I didn't know anything. I'm just making money and buying what I need and getting this, and there's money in the checking account, and okay, we're killing it. I just closed $100,000 deal. We're killing it. There's no allocation. And I had Dwayne, I had friends tell me this is verbatim. My one friend goes, you you ought to you ought to consider getting a bean counter. That was his term. Right? He goes like,
Right, right.
someone needs to like track what you're doing. He goes, you're making a lot and you're spending a lot. And I was spending it on the business. I had no vices. I couldn't even say I was gambling or taking trips or I was just like, hey, I'll buy some equipment. Let's do this. Let's do that. I got the cash and I was buying stuff. So this is going to go to the point of like, you got to sometimes farm out experts like you. Okay. You got to bring these people in because you're never going to know as much as that individual, someone like Dwayne, right? You can come in and let them go to work. And then the second part two of that is be coachable, be trainable, implement what they do, right? Because I think a lot of times I've had clients and they just don't do what we're recommending. And that's on them. That's okay. They don't have to, but you guys like you and I, we're also not employees. We're not doing the work. Okay, like you said, you're an advisor here. This is what we've proven works. You might want to consider this, and it's really final decisions on them. And the ones that take it do really well. I have
Mm.
clients that like I tell them one thing this week, next week it's done. And we do the next thing, and wow, did they just go to the moon? It's awesome. So it's just that's a little side advertisement right there.
Well, I think what I appreciate that, and I think what you described early on is like when you're talking about that you were doing well and you were making good money, you were spending good money, you were spending on the business. I mean, that's the normal life cycle of an early stage company is that you have a leader that is passionate and hungry and then you start hiring people that try to help and support and fill gaps that you have within the organization. And what I worry about is when as companies get larger and larger, they start losing touch with that early stage energy, excitement, innovation, capabilities. And I write in my book that you could take an organization like an R&D of a technology company, startup technology company, and you could take their that group does all the innovation. You stick them into one of the big behemoth companies and double their funding, and their innovation and productivity is going to plummet because they've lost the environment that created that ability to produce results. And so you have to be careful to when you grow not to lose the energy and excitement growth that you really had when you really started. So that's one of the prices you have to be careful that you don't pay to get larger.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let me, along those same lines, when you come into a company, sometimes what I've noticed too is they're hiring a lot of in-house people, meaning full time with this expertise or that expertise, and sometimes they're doing that way too early. Sometimes they have more than they ever need, like they would never need a in-house person for that. And I think in today's marketplace, Duane, I love you to talk to this. It's just, again, there's a lot of talent out there that's freelancing, right? Like you come in for a month, come in for a 3 month period, do this, get it set. Maybe that's cyclical too. Every year they come in, they do maybe once a quarter, they come in and they hit this stuff and do it and take care of this stuff. And I find that to be with the right team, the right people, to be very economical, a great way to manage cash flow. Because man, those in-house people and that salary, that's every week, every 2 weeks. It doesn't go
Right. That's
away.
right. And a lot of times those people, what's nice about their circumstances is they're seeing what is working for 5 or 10 more other companies, and they can bring that experience. Where somebody who just focuses on you doesn't have quite that breadth of experience. And also you get a chance to try before you buy, so to speak. So you're educating yourself on someone else's experience on what do I need? And now you're a much better consumer if you decide, okay, we've matured to the point where we do need to hire a full-time person. You are much better educated about how to do that. Otherwise, you're kind of just calling up a recruiter saying, I think I need this, and this, and bring him over, and you kind of interview somebody and you say, oh, this person has it pretty well together. Well, let's give it a try. And that's really not the way to come about important positions that you need. You need that to have educate yourself and have a good amount of experience to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a solid plan. But it's the the beauty is it's available now. I go back 30 years, right? I started 35 years ago in business. None of that was like impossible.
Yes.
Okay, didn't exist,
More
didn't
than
have the
ever.
internet. You weren't getting virtual assistants to whatever, to fractional CFOs, right? Now you pretty much have your pick. But
Yep.
I think you made a good point that look for the short term, right? The
Yep. Mhm.
tryouts,
Start there. Uh-huh.
to start there, let them work. Okay, that's good. Then you go to the next thing. So you're not locking in to
That's
these
right.
6 month, 1 year, whatever. I mean, again, if they're coming well recommended, they have a certain role, like, it's once a week. We do that. I get that. But for positions like that have specific bearing on a one expertise, you really should take those steps, really, because there's good. It's like what's the saying? What do they call the guy who graduates last in his medical class? They call him
Doctor.
doctor, right? So you're going to get those people too. So
Right,
remember,
right.
they're all good and bad. So you got to find who's going to work the best. Yeah, good stuff. So take us down the road a little further now. So you've been doing this. We get where you came from. You're kind of out there being in this advisor role now. So when people are reaching out to you specifically, Duane, let's kind of get some high point like issues. Like what are the tipping points? This is what I like to know. What's the
Yeah.
most painful thing that they incur that make them call you? Because that's always fascinating to me.
And that's one of the things that I find discouraging because by the time I'm usually called in, companies are not in good shape. And so a lot of circumstances, some events have come down and they've tried to fix them on their own, and how they tried to fix them broke them further. So what they did is they missed whether it's budgets, debt covenants, some sort of aspect that was serious enough that they had to start cutting costs. And they didn't really know how to cut costs. And so what they did is they said, everybody, you got to cut 10%. And no one really kind of knew how to do it. So basically it was headcount. And so they target headcount because hey, you know what? It's off our books, and by in 2 weeks, pay them a little severance, and we're done. And the problem is that they cripple the organization in that now there's less people to actually help the company function efficiently. There's in many cases the vendors that are left are being mismanaged because there's not enough people to manage them. In many cases they even hire contractors and vendors to try to fill those jobs and roles that they let go. And so sure enough, they continue to do poorly. And so they're getting into a little bit of a death spiral. And so they what do they do when they continue to do poorly? They lay people off again. And now we start that whole cycle over. And so it's unfortunate that a lot of times when I come in, companies have made some poor decisions, and I'm there trying to rescue a situation. Occasionally, I get lucky, and somebody there and a company is just a little bit more contemplative and progressive in their thinking, and says, basically, I'd like you to come in and just take a look at how we're doing business. Or maybe they've only missed budget. Maybe it's not so dire of a situation where they can call me in and we have time to do it right. And doing it right means you take a fresh look at where you're spending your money and where you can cut back. And so you make those cuts over time and more accurately, more with more precision rather than some taking the hatchet and cutting headcount.
Yeah, that seems to be the norm. Most people don't act until they have sufficient pain.
Yeah.
Okay, then they
Yep.
do it,
And
but it's nice when you get those that actually call you because they're doing fine. They want to do better. Those are my favorite clients because
that's right.
like you said, they're forward thinking. Okay,
That's
we
right.
got this. It's like profit leakage. Where we leak in profit because it's not a matter of hiring more or getting different machines. It's like, let's fix what we have. Let's tighten it up, which basically what you're talking about. And there's a lot of money being lost. Like I deal out in manufacturing on the floor. Oh my gosh, it's millions of dollars
Yes.
that's just leaking out. They don't
It's
even,
scary. It's scary.
yeah. And you
Yeah.
start to recover that. Yeah, you get hero status pretty fast.
Yeah.
You can do that.
So I noticed that, like, because people think that when you lift the hood of a company, you look at that engine, they think it's a well-oiled and clean operating machine, something really impressive. The truth is, you lift that hood and you're like, how is this car even running? And so companies generally have a lot of problems that they need help with, and a lot of that problem come from sometimes it's just from growth and as companies grow, they get more bloated. But most of the time, I find it comes with acquisitions where they made acquisitions that they kind of bolted onto the company. They didn't want to disrupt the acquired company as much, or there were systems that were just so integrated into those prior companies that they just didn't want to worry about that. And sure enough, you end up with a whole different silos all around with their own set of operating systems that are redundant to the other operating systems within the company. And so you have this kind of bolt-on, almost Frankenstein type engine that really does not operate efficiently.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's so many variables. So they're
Mhm.
growing, like
Yeah,
you're saying. So they're growing, they require this and this and this, but there's no really cohesive integration,
right.
within it. And I'll tell you, I've got one company now there, every 5 years they got to upgrade the operating system. Okay. Holy cow, that is just an absolute nightmare, but they have to do it to keep current and everything else. But that'll knock them out for like 2.5 months, just
Wow.
getting reacquainted, bringing that up. I mean, that is an unbelievable drain.
Yes.
Okay, on a company's margin. I mean, and you're starting a year off. They did it in December, and then like, holy cow, now like now you got all of January and half of February. Your first quarter's half over, and you've done nothing except trying
Be
to.
very distracting. Yep.
Yeah, it's really hard. So, like I said, when people you got to forecast this stuff. What does it mean? Like, it's the all or nothing that's very difficult.
Yeah.
You can't come in here. I'm just going to turn the table over, flip the
Right.
table over, and the game pieces everywhere. Like, okay, we're going to start new. I'm bringing a new game. We're going to do that. That doesn't really work either,
That's right.
right?
That's right. You have to aim. You have to be. I take segments of the business. I don't try to disrupt everything at once. You go piece by piece. And you have a strategy in that effort. Now you start where the organization is probably hemorrhaging most, and many times the organization knows that. They know where they're weakest, and so you focus on those areas and you try to clean it up. but you have to be careful not to, if you disrupt that company and you start implementing vendors that are providing a lesser service just to try to give them better cash flow or something like that, you could be hurting your own client. Well, it's very important to me when I leave, not only are they have a better profitability or cash flow, and which they can choose to reinvest in the business or anything else like that. But they actually are also operating better, more. Their performance is higher. They're more efficient, and they're growing more rapidly. Because that's my true test of success. Because if I only sell that, hey, I'm going to make you more profitable, then I'm not sure. I don't think I'm necessarily helping the company because that's not a long-term aspect. If I tell them that I am enhancing the performance, that's a more long-term vision.
Yeah, we do the same thing. We kind of install command, and it's about operation.
Yeah.
The profit leakage gets sealed by
Hmm.
proper operation, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, and I always kind of make fun, but you go to your leadership training seminar for 3 days. You come
Right.
back, you're all keyed up on Monday. By Thursday, you're back to the same old, same old,
That's right.
because
You don't make the change.
they don't have an identity. So we're about
Yeah.
installing identity, and then
Yeah.
that's how people act. They act based on who they are,
Yes.
not what like they're kind of told to do. When you make those changes and you understand that, and these things stick,
Yes.
that kind of thing compounds over time. So you may save 1.5 million this year, but by year 3 and 4, that's up to 2.3 now because it's
Mhm.
compounding, right? You've got it operationally, they're doing really, really well. And like I always call us like the outside eyes. We can come in and see a lot of things others can't because they're in it. But when you get them operationally, sound, they start seeing these little things, catching it early, and that's how it begins to compound.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now they have this additional um attention, right? As guys on the floor, we call them commanders, but guys working this, and that is constantly growing and saving and creating the next level of operators from inside who are going
Mhm.
to do the same thing. So it's kind of cool when you get that. It's very similar like what you're doing. You're installing you're installing these savings, these efficiencies, and everything else. Let them know how to keep it working themselves.
Yeah,
You
because really what you're saying is that it's contagious.
too.
Efficiency is contagious, and so is inefficiency. And so you have to be, if you start and you instill a practice of, and I see this a lot with companies, particularly at the leadership. They want us. I had one company that they would ship all their employees, fly all their employees to Vegas once a year for a boondoggle, paid crazy money for like entertainers, top ranked entertainers, fancy dinners, these huge kind of stellar events. What message are you sending those employees? Are you sending them one that this company has to be lean and efficient, or are you sending them one that, wait, we have money to burn here. We are, have fun and those type of things. Because and the leadership thinks, well, if, as soon as we leave Vegas, what stays in Vegas, um, but it really doesn't. You bring it home, and now that new culture is instilled into your group. Now you can absolutely reverse it the same way by what and is what you were saying is that if you teach a group to be efficient, they pass that along. And if you reward that, if you highlight it at company meetings or newsletters or whatever, even financially, you say this person accomplished X, Y, Z, and so we are awarding them this bonus for doing this and that. Well, employees are going to notice that. They're going to see that, and it's going to start impacting the culture of the organization. And before long, everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, it's so important. You're right on those big. It's a big party for everyone. I mean, it's just go get liquored and gamble and lose all your money. And it's a typical if you're ever flying out west or you're going to Vegas, everyone's all loud. They're drinking on the plane. Same people coming home. If you come home like 2, 3 days, not a word. Hungover, drunk, stupid. There's just like you just go, wow, that must have been a lot of fun.
Richard,
You're
I
all
have
like,
I, I have a story that's right on that. So when I had my own business back when I was my late 20s at this point, and all my employees were also in their 20s, and we were a young group and always had fun together. And I decided I wanted, because we had such a great quarter, I was going to give them bonuses and I wanted to give them this treat. And so I took them all to where I'm on the East Coast. We went to Atlantic City, which has casinos, and gave them their bonus checks on the way there. And all but one, who was a Christian, so she didn't gamble, but all the rest lost their bonus. And it
Yeah.
was like the ride back was like a morgue. It was
Yeah.
so quiet and depressed. It was terrible. So I learned
Um,
a lot from that.
yeah, and we have a responsibility as owners too, for that kind of thing. I mean, I want to see my people succeed, and again, they earn these bonuses and everything else, and they might take it and go on their own and do what you do. But I don't know if I'm like you, like I just condone like total take and
Right.
lose everything, come back. Now you got to keep working because you're broke. Okay,
What if
but yeah,
what if I had taken that money instead and put it into their retirement fund
right.
as just an influx in that cash, and how that'd still be benefiting them today instead of
Yeah.
MGM and Caesar's Palace.
But you're right though, because as owners of businesses, it's a kind of a test of character, and when we go and work with these individuals, right, you're looking at that, and then
Mhm.
you're seeing their books and like, what are you doing? There's the company outing, here's this, there's this. I was getting asked this morning actually, like, well, do they do dinners? Do they do this about a certain company? I go, they do. But the other recognition, because we were talking about implementing a recognition program there back, a year or two ago, they didn't have that. So
Mhm.
all you guys were working, and it's all
Mhm.
manufactured. Like, but okay, so they smoke some ribs and they have a barbecue outside there, and I mean that there's nothing wrong with that. But like,
Right.
you're not giving individual recognition.
Right.
Whether it's public, private, combination, awards, all that stuff. I said you really, and I'm a guy who used to not believe in that.
Mm.
Okay. I'm a guy who like I gave all my trophies away. I don't need this stuff. I'm winning stuff. I'm doing this. I didn't care about the trophy. I cared about the thing. I'm an oddball. Okay. Most people are not like
Right.
that. They want to, but you need to have that as part of the company culture.
That's true.
Okay. Because that goes miles. And it's like I remember when my one client's like, yeah, I get pictures from my franchisees. They have like an empty space on their shelf. They're like waiting for my trophy. Because it was on the way they sent them that just a spot because they had like 3 years. And I'm like, they anticipate that stuff, right? They're working towards those things. They seem non-consequential to us as owners sometimes, like, hey, they're doing what they're supposed to do, but it means a lot. I
Yeah.
remember it. I was telling this guy this morning, my dad, again, I told you in the golf course, I come in his office and just it was a wall full of like commendations and awards and all this stuff because he was just so good at what I was like, I just as a kid, just that's amazing. Look at all that stuff. It's like
Yeah.
it's so it matters. It really matters.
And I think that's the latter part of that last part of your statement was probably the most important because it's not only about recognizing the individual. Yes, it makes them feel good, and most people do like some sort of reassurance and recognition. But really, it's a lot about what other people are going to see, and what it tells them about the behavior you're rewarding and what you're trying to encourage. So it's as important to that individual as it is to the overall organization that needs to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think behavior is a
Mm.
good word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what you haven't. What's the behavior type? It's like kids. Okay, like I tell them all the right things. They only do what they're going to see me do, right? So
Right.
my behavior is what they're going to do, not my words. Like if you just do that, like it'll change the direction you're walking a little bit because
We're
you have that
humans, we're part of
responsibility.
society, we're part of trends, and if we start seeing people behaving in a certain way, it's almost our instinct to try to follow along on what is becoming the more proper way to move forward. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes it can be detrimental. So it's very important as a leader of an organization, I'm sure you're passing on the message that it needs to be a positive direction forward, and this
Yeah,
is the example of that, and you have to set the example yourself as well. If you're running off and having great board meetings at these extravagant places, have a private jet that you're flying all around, you're at risk of telling the employees that, yeah, hey, you do what I say and not what I do.
yeah. It's it, and some people get it, some don't, some balance it out and everything else. And I get all that. But I think if you really get down to when you talked about in the beginning about a well-run company,
Yeah.
a value, an attractive company, there's a lot of elements, and we hit a lot of them today. So this is not snap your fingers and you have an attractive company.
That's right.
This is
That's right.
piece by piece. If you're not there, obviously the best time to start would be today. Okay. And
That's
start
right.
working towards that. Who do you got to bring in? Who do you got to, get for that help? Who can see better? Cause like me, I'm not a gift person. So
Hmm.
I'd hire out. I don't buy gifts for my clients. Someone else does
Right.
because
Right.
they would get absolutely what they don't want, and it wouldn't make any
Right.
sense because I'm that oddball, right? So I I'm just ask my wife. I'm terrible at it. Okay, just terrible. So I've accepted that. I'm like, well, I just don't because I don't think that way. So you hire it out. There's people who have a whole bit. My sister-in-law, just to give her a plug, she doesn't do business, but I've never met a more thoughtful gift giver in my life.
Wow. That's a
Like
great trait.
everything she gives is like everything she gives me. Like she's in California, I'm in Wisconsin. I see her, I don't know, once a year if I'm lucky. Always the perfect gift,
Wow.
usable. I'm like, man, she's just good at it.
Wow.
Everything she gives someone like it. I've never seen someone so thoughtful and accurate in gift giving in my life.
She's got a
Okay,
gift for
like
gifts.
I'm
All right.
telling you. So if I need, I lean her way. Hey, I need to get so and so. But yeah, it's really cool to see. But those things matter too. Just like your award, it has to be
Uh-huh.
appropriate, right?
Uh-huh.
Size, look, everything else. It's a whole nother topic, obviously. But that recognition aspect and quality feedback, I put the two together because people will be told they'll take being told they're doing wrong if you show them the right way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
And you say,
That's right.
this is a little off, man. Let's get back on track here. Let me help you get
Yeah.
this dialed in. See, now I just showed you. Now you do it. You got it. Okay, I think we're good to go now. Now you're going to be fine. They'll love you because
And that's leadership. Yeah.
no one wants to do things wrong.
Right. Right.
Just like I said, people don't want to not work.
Yeah.
They want to work. They want to do it right. They want to be rewarded. They like it's not a complicated process. You just have to build it properly.
If your strategy, and you do have managers like this, that feel better by putting other staff down, and that's
No,
not leadership, obviously.
no,
So that's
they got to
not
go.
you're not, and
Yeah.
that's not going to be successful in the long run for the employees or for
No.
that manager.
I had I was talking to a gentleman this morning too, and I said, there's a guy, because we're talking about efficiencies, right?
Hmm.
So, these guys, they make sheets. So they cut these sheets for cabinets, and anything over 41 sheets in the day is pure profit. Okay. So, like, they have this efficiency bonus. And my son works there, some other people doing it's like, we could do 60 a day without even trying hard. And
Right?
this other guy's like, you guys can't make so much, because that's making us work harder and everything else. And I went, now, if that was me and I was there, we'd be walking to the door. He'd swipe his card for the last time with the time card. I'll mail you a
Right?
check. No
Yeah. Yeah.
cancer is good. That's a cancer.
That's
No
right.
one with
That's
that
right.
mindset, not that they
That's
got
right.
to kill it every day, but like someone who's telling others to not work hard,
That's right.
like you're out. Like that
That's right.
person,
That's right.
you are personally escorted to the door,
Yeah. Go
maybe
go
even
go
to
work
your
for my
car.
competitor.
Exactly. Go work for them. So it's just, but that just kind of wraps this whole conversation up, right? There's all these, all these little elements you hit. Now you're an efficiency guy. We're looking at numbers. We're doing all this stuff, but I think what's great about this, Duane, is people see it's all a compounding effect
Mm.
to really elevating a business, and seldom is one person your guy or
Yeah.
girl, right? Who's
Yeah.
going to fix all that. But you just
That's
need
right.
to understand. And I think personally, and this is not because you're my guest today, you better start with the numbers.
Hmm.
You better get that
Yeah.
dialed in because that's going to
Yeah.
enable you to do this other stuff, right?
Know your numbers. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
powerful, powerful. So let's just in wrap up, give us some final thoughts,
Hmm.
kind of what you've seen, what you're doing, where people can go. Then we'll kind of get into the final details.
So I want to feed a little bit on what you were speaking about, in that it's not just one person, and it also goes back into my concern that companies tend to wait too long before they actually try to make a move in order to try to do better and build a stronger platform that can be a catalyst to faster growth and long-term capabilities. And so my plea of the last year or two is for companies to look at themselves and and try to do a more honest evaluation. I think the United States, we focus a lot on innovation and growth. Like if you go to try to get an investor, whether it's a venture capital or private equity, their biggest thing is they really want to see is an innovation and or growth. And the problem is in that can work for a while, but if you don't have an efficient platform, then you can't, you're going to start to run into problems as competition emerges, as innovation starts to slow, as growth starts to slow, and then they start realizing they've got fundamental problems in the organization and they're scrambling to fix them. So try to get in front of that. Because trying to get a stronger platform is a catalyst to further growth and further innovation. It's not going to slow a company down. And I really try to encourage leadership to acknowledge that and realize that, because then they will look at that platform and realize that is not going to hold them back, but is going to actually create more of what they need as an organization, be better for their shareholders, better for their employees, better for the company and customers. So I would look at your company now early, even if you don't think you have issues and you think you're doing fine. It's why not look for an opportunity to do better?
Yeah, it needs to be part of your operating system.
Yeah,
It
that's
really
right.
does. And I think so many you're hustling when you start, you're hustling to make the sales and build the business, and
Yeah,
that can wait.
yeah.
And I'll raise my first one to raise my hand. I shouldn't have waited. I waited way too long. But you get to the point where now you're going, if I just had the money I lost. Yeah. Okay. So you get to that point. So it's and I love the advice, because I think people, if they begin with that in mind, okay, that this is important. It's the hard work of business.
Mm,
That's why I didn't do it. I was out making incredible things and having a good time, and people pat me on the back and winning awards and doing all
huh?
this stuff, but I wasn't doing the hard work, the stuff I absolutely hated to do, you
Yes,
know?
absolutely.
But the one caveat to that was, I'm thinking I had to do it. I wasn't bright enough at the time to know that other people, I was all willing to buy stuff and spend money. I was just spending it on the wrong stuff. I need a guy like Duane here to come in and handle this for me. Who knows where I'd be today, right? A different place, but I'm happy where I'm at. Not saying that. Had to do other stuff.
You look like you're doing well.
Yeah, and I love the wisdom you brought here today, Duane. This has been really, really a good conversation for people to get a little introspective and see what they're doing with their business. Regardless of your size,
Mm,
it doesn't matter. Numbers are numbers. Numbers, they work at all levels.
that's
Okay,
right.
so
That's right.
but if you can build this as a habit, as part of an operating system in your business, like you said, the rewards, the long-term gain, the long-term success, the ability to step away from your business while it still runs, all the cool things about owning the
That's right.
business are possible if you're
The earlier you start, the better, because it's like exercise. If you do it when you're young, it's so much easier to keep going when you're older. I
that's
mean, you
right.
can get in shape when you're older, but it's just going to take a little bit more work.
It's a
But you got
long
to do
road
it either way.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So how do people get in touch with you? How do they follow you? Maybe they want to talk to you about their business. What do they need to do?
I encourage you to get in touch with my website. It's www.efficacygroup.com. That's EFFICACY group.com. On there, I've got all sorts of information, a blog, and has my own podcast, which focuses on cost management. Surprise, surprise. And I also ways to reach me if you have anything you'd like to, one of your listeners would like to talk about. I'm passionate about being an advocate for this area because I see so many companies doing it poorly and hurting so many people. So I'm actually anxious to talk to people, and I do a lot of free advice in my efforts because some companies just need an hour or two of my time. I'm happy to donate that because I want people to succeed, and I don't feel like I need to make my money off of that. So please get in touch, and look forward to speaking to anybody who's interested in reaching out.
Well, I love it. I love it. Duane, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I appreciate everything you brought to the conversation. And man, what a good time. But I'll tell you, for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Sharpen the Spear podcast. If you're a manufacturing executive and you're serious about unlocking hidden profit, improving frontline leadership, and taking control of your floor, go to grit2lead.com right now. Run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator and discover your biggest opportunities are hiding. Don't leave millions on the table. Sharpen your spear, lead from the front, and win the floor. Until next time, stay sharp.